Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this presentation. My name is Jeff Hulstrung. I'm the president of the Green Mountain Audubon Society, a chapter of the National Audubon Society covering Franklin, Grand Isle, and Chittenden counties in Vermont. If you receive the Audubon magazine on a quarterly basis and live in one of those three counties, you're probably a member of Green Mountain Audubon Society, so thank you for being a member. If you're interested in getting more information, I pasted a link in the chat, which enables you to get more information and possibly join the chapter or to make a donation to the chapter if you have the means and the inclination. Our chapter is based in northwestern Vermont, a region which has been sacred to Indigenous people for thousands of years. The Western Abnaki are the traditional caretakers of these lands and waters. We respect their connection to this region and remember the hardships that they continue to endure. We give thanks for the opportunity to share this place, and we commit ourselves to help protect it. And with that, I will hand it over to Tom. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have the pleasure and honor of hosting some citizen scientists, people who are kind of fulfilling the message that we have on the website of connecting people with nature. Well, let me tell you, folks, up in the Jericho area, these two individuals who will be presenting jointly tonight are certainly the real definition and example of people who are connecting with nature. I have known Maeve since I taught her children at Essex High School back in the early 80s, and I have known Bernie for about 8 years. I attended their commitment ceremony in their gorgeous backyard, which is now turned into a veritable wonderland of opportunities for science and observation. So without any further ado, we will let people in as they come. Tonight for the presentation, if you have questions, Mav and Bernie have asked that all questions be addressed at the end of the presentation. So simply type them into the chat and we will relay them at the end. So here we go. Mav and Bernie, take it away.
Hello, everyone. All of us who love being outside in nature are truly fortunate. Our hobby, our pastime, our passion rewards us with fresh air and peace and quiet and contemplation and delight. We have always known what scientists are finding out. Time in nature can lower our heart rate and blood pressure, reduce the production of stress hormones, boost the immune system, reduce inflammation, make us less irritable and angry, improve overall feelings of well-being, and just feel good. And time in nature rewards us with great finds. So what exactly makes a great find? Well, I can think of several categories. Here are 4. We can see something absolutely, totally unexpected. We can travel a long distance and or spend a lot of money or use a lot of physical effort, and then we see the exact natural delight that we hope to find. 3, we finally get to see some kind of wildlife away or right here at home that has eluded us for ages. And 4, we can see a bird or an insect or a critter that we have seen many times before, but for some reason, perhaps because of a felicitous combination of the day, the light, the animal's behavior, your mood, your companions, whatever, that one special sighting is absolutely breathtaking. And from that day on, whenever you think of that species, you remember that great find. Let's start with category 1, the unexpected. You're out for a birding walk, you're strolling along, thinking about, I don't know, confusing fall warblers or something, or what to have for dinner, or you're planning the next project at work, or maybe you're not actually thinking at all. And then you see something that looks completely impossible. One day in 2014, I was taking a walk at Shelburne Farms. And as I strolled by the beach, a large bird glided over the water just offshore. My befuddled brain processed it as a chocolate brown gannet. But I was sure that I'd seen a flash of snowy white belly as the bird banked. And that's not even true of the immatures. It wasn't until I got back into the car and my trusty Sibley field guide that I realized that I had seen, however improbably, a brown booby. Presumably the same bird that was seen by several birders a few days earlier at Charlottetown Beach. And maybe this wanderer who showed up a few years later. Now, if I had been lucky enough to see the bird above me in flight like this beautiful picture, I think I might have realized sooner what totally unexpected great find I was seeing. Now imagine standing somewhere else on the shores of Lake Champlain. You're staring at some busily feeding shorebirds, and suddenly your eyes are attracted to a large white blob farther out. You stare, you run back to the car and get your spotting scope, you stare some more, and then the blob wakes up and stretches, and you see a humongous orangey yellow bill. Now, white pelicans do not hang out in Vermont, but this one did. For days, it hobnobbed with Canada geese. It showed off its superior size to assorted gulls. And finally, that lost pelican took off for parts unknown. Now, for many, many, many birders, that was a great find. Category 2, they're the ones you got to pay for. One of my most favorite Category 2 great finds of all times was just outside Churchill, Manitoba. I had wanted to see tundra and tundra birds for more than 30 years. So I signed up with Victor Emmanuel Nature Tours, even though I most often go birding by myself. This time a tour was called for. And I traveled to Chicago, and then I traveled to Winnipeg, and then I traveled to Churchill, the last leg on a noisy and rattly little 2-engine prop plane. And the tour, the tundra, and the birds repaid me way more than the expense in time, distance, and money. On our very first day, that willow ptarmigan on the right charged the van, his little red eyebrows raised and bristling with aggression. And the warmly feathered legs and feet, pictured on the right there, told us of cold winters. And then the birds started warning us in no uncertain terms. Over and over again, it said, go back, 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 go back. This sweet-faced black-necked stilt was another Category 2 great find. I flew into Houston, fought the Houston's traffic, took another plane to Midland, Odessa, rented a sturdy car, and started the long, long drive to Big Bend National Park. I stopped overnight in the small town of Balmoral, and I decided to spend some time birding at the lake and along various irrigation ditches. And I saw 54 species in 2 hours. I'd have to say the lake itself was a great find. And this is another location that takes time and travel to get to for us Vermont birders and is really worth it. Bosque de la Pace National Wildlife Refuge, south of Albuquerque, New Mexico. This refuge is home to the famous walk-in to fly-out. Takes place on the deck in this photo. On cold November mornings, groups of shivering birders gather before dawn and huddle on this little deck, staring into the dark. And they can hear little mutters, little movements in front of them, but they cannot see a thing. And then the sun peaks up, and over 10,000 snow geese take to the air at once in a huge whoosh of feathers and calls. The Bosque is also a great place to see sandhill cranes, and they are a great find wherever you find them. And the Bosque was the setting for my all-time most favorite wildlife experience, or at least way up there on my list. An experience that still fills me with a sense of awe and delight. I was strolling along a lonely trail when suddenly, right in front of me, was a bobcat. The cat sat down. We looked at each other for a while. I snapped 8 or 10 pictures. Then the cat yawned and started looking around for something more interesting. and a few seconds later, it melted into the underbrush. One more great New Mexico find. All three species of rosy finches atop Sandia Crest, exactly where everybody told me they would be. I actually don't think it's possible to visit either New Mexico nor Arizona without wonderful experiences. Bernie and I were walking along the South Fork Canyon Trail near Portal, Arizona, when not one, but two male elegant trogons rocketed past us. We learned later that male trogons often do side-by-side flights to make sure each one knows exactly the boundaries of the other's territory. Both of us took off running down the trail, and Bernie found this one sitting on a branch, looking around to make sure its rival was really gone. Later that same day, a fellow birder took another picture of, I think probably our trogon, and then emailed it to us. Another Arizona great find was this little Anna's hummingbird sitting on her nest. I love this photo because you can really see all the cobwebs she has used that will allow her nest to expand as the young birds grow. It is always delightful and exciting to come across a bird building a nest, or sitting on a nest, or feeding young. It gives us a glimpse of the everyday life of that bird. We watched this cactus wren and her energetically begging youngster for many minutes. And this bird, always a beauty, was made even more special because it was actually working on its nest hidden behind Spanish moss. We can pay for a Category 2 great find in time, money, distance, or all of them. And we can also pay in energy or sweat or physical effort. Bernie and I toiled up the Miller Canyon Trail in Arizona's Huachuca Mountains, hoping to see one of a pair of Mexican spotted owls that had been reported in the area. And we did. And there's one more kind of effort that many, many birders need whenever they go birding on a pelagic trip. I absolutely love pelagic trips, but some people have to work hard not to lose their breakfast. Many birders rather suffer every single minute of every single voyage. So this great shearwater, one of over 100, was a hard-won great find for many of the people aboard a pelagic trip from Grand Manan Island. And the two fin whales right next to our boat and the sooty shearwater were icing on the cake. Category 3. Tom will recognize this picture. This is desperately hoped for. A Category 3 great find occurs when you really, really, really want to see a particular type of wildlife. Maybe you're far from where you usually go birding, in a habitat where your desired bird is a real possibility. Maybe many other birders have reported one right where you are, but you have never seen one. This is a limpkin. I would love to see a limpkin. I have gone to places specifically to find a limpkin. I have not seen a limpkin. So for me, a limpkin remains a Category 3 great find for the future. And hingas, though, were a Category 3 great find. I have always been fascinated by these snake birds, as they used to be called. My first anhinga at Ding Darling National Wildlife Refuge on Florida's Sanibel Island turned out to be a black plastic garbage bag hung up on a mangrove tree. But later that day, I saw this beautiful bird, and the two turtles really add to the beauty. And more recently, Bernie and I spent a delightful 20 minutes or so communing with this female anhinga on Jekyll Island, Georgia. And these photos show how unexpectedly lovely anhingas can be. Another bird I've wanted to see for years and years and years is an American dipper. These odd, chubby little birds are the only truly aquatic songbird in North America. They forage under fast-moving streams, finding small invertebrates in the gravelly stream beds. And in the winter, some dippers actually migrate north and spend the winter diving under frigid water in larger streams that don't freeze solid. I love these two pictures by Charles Genghis. This is the best of 24 dipper photos I took in Oregon. There were wildfires all around, and the air was heavy with smoke. But that little bird was still a great find. And this is a good place, by the way, to thank the birders and photographers who have shared their photos for this program. If no one is mentioned on a slide, it was taken by either me or by my partner, Bernie Paquette. Category 4, familiar, but wow. One year, Bernie and I spent a few nights during spring migration at Highland Lodge in Greensboro. I got up early and went outside our cottage, and there was this splendid Blackburnian warbler right before my eyes. These little birds are always a delight to see, but the place and the misty morning and the quiet and the special vacation for the two of us, all of these combine to make the bird even more wonderful. And then there's the bird, a familiar bird, that one day startles you or makes you laugh or teaches you something you hadn't known before, and you remember that moment for years. Between us, Bernie and I have many pictures of osprey perched, flying, nesting, but one sighting was particularly memorable because of the osprey's unusual behavior. All of us have heard, probably, that osprey are fish eaters. In fact, some sources say they are exclusively fish eaters. But this osprey at Arrowhead Mountain Lake carefully skinned and then ate a frog while we sat in our kayaks and watched. Seeing that behavior constituted a great find. And my last 4 great finds in nature all involve herons and their relatives. It was a slightly foggy morning on a little island off the coast of southern Georgia. Bernie and I were in the midst of a truly magical stay. We were taking a walk along a private dirt road with no humans, no cars, no houses visible in any direction. And suddenly there was this snowy egret posing for us on a dead snag, its famous golden slippers subdued in the morning mist. Here's another category 4 great find. A green heron doing something that green herons do not do. This was at Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge. And that bird, so often an elusive species, just remained balanced there on a wire for a good 5 minutes. And another heron, we were standing in the parking lot at the Sandbar Fishing Access, looking across the water at distant wood ducks and mallards, when we became aware of small rustling sounds above our heads. We looked up, and there was this great blue heron, barely 6 yards from our eyes. The big bird glared at us, but then he went on with his morning preening duties. The heron gave us all the time we wanted to appreciate that huge beak and those amazing feet. And finally, before I turn this evening's program over to Bernie for even more great finds in nature, I imagine that every single person in the audience tonight has seen at least one great egret. They are always striking. They're huge, they're snowy white, they have humongous bills, ebony legs, those alert staring eyes. But it is a whole different experience to sit and watch a great egret doing his courtship dance, ducking his head, stamping his feet, clicking his bill, shaking those gorgeous long plumes, trying to catch the attention of the coy female behind him. And the experience gets even richer if the female finally comes closer and the male's excitement increases. And finally, after many minutes, to watch these 2 dramatically beautiful birds making more of them, this is a privilege one never forgets. It is a truly great find in nature. And now, a great find for me, Bernie Paquette.
Please bear with me a moment while I figure out how to bring up my notes. Let's see. Figure out how to bring up the notes. Let's see.
They're right there, Vern.
Yeah, but I need them not to be showing. Let's
Oh.
see.
Just bear with us a minute. We're trying Keynote this
Oops.
time rather than PowerPoint. And so it's got a few little oddities.
Yeah, but I'm not. It's not allowing.
While we are preparing the second half of our presentation, if any of you arrived a bit late, I'd like to reiterate that we'll be taking questions for Bernie and Mav at the end of the presentation. So on the bottom of your screen, you should see a chat icon, which you can click on. And on the right side of your computer screen, you'll see on the bottom right where it says chat. So that is where you'll be typing questions. And that is where we will be relaying the questions to Mav and to Bernie. So as they prepare for the second half, we would like to take the opportunity to thank you for coming to tonight's presentation and also remind you that we have a presentation coming up quite soon featuring the daughter of one of the Franklin County Maine birders, Julie Filiberte, whose daughter Emily Filiberte is a graduate student and will be presenting some of her doctoral research. You can see all of the rest of our 6 programs to come on the events page of the Green Mountain Audubon website. Also, if you would be so kind, we would love for you to be able to make a donation to us, $2, $3, $5. We'll tell you that we are using the donated money from our programs this year in support of programs that are helping youth who are underserved. For example, we will be helping the Missisquoi Reserve, who have a program where they are supporting some of the local elementary and middle schools with their transportation costs. So thanks again. And looks like we are getting ready to commence the second part of our program tonight.
Tom, does the screen look okay to you?
It looks great. Away we go.
Great.
Okay, good.
So thank you, Matt, for the great finds and experiences together. I'm so glad you found me too. Hello, GMAS members and guests. My name is Bernie Paquette, and I enjoy promoting curiosity, observation, and reflection of all life forms in nature. So tonight I'll introduce you to an activity that is not only like birding, some would even suggest it supports birding, and I call it inverting. So birds must have an abundance of caterpillars in order to raise their young. Mav and I like watching birds, so it made sense to learn more about what's on their menu. The more books and research papers I read about insects, the further I want to go down the rabbit hole, or should I say the beetle or bee hole. Suddenly I'm so as passionate about life forms that I hardly knew existed. Never mind understanding the extreme diversity of their behaviors amongst the world of insects, insect taxon. So folks who are new to birding might ask where to go to see birds. Likewise, someone interested in invertebrates might ask, well, where do I go to see what birds eat? So let's take a closer look at what's on the fresh and alive menu for birds. Tonight, I'll show you images of a small sampling of the insects I've observed over the last 3 years across the journey of nearly 100 miles. Think of this as a glimpse of the meat section of a menu in a restaurant designed for birds. Along with some of the images of great finds, I'll show you a few of the insect behaviors that I've witnessed, from predation to copulation. I'll end with what I think is the best place to go to observe and photograph insects. And I'll explain why photography and taking pictures and posting on iNaturalist is icing on the cake above the real life outdoor observations. So let's take a look at the first menu on the restaurant bird menu. Caterpillars. They transfer energy from plants to birds. According to Doug Tallamy, it takes 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars to raise one family of chickadees. Birds, especially those raising a family, want to know, where's the beef? Now, what bird could resist this beauty on its plate? Me, I just wanted to rub its belly and see if all its legs would shimmy about in glee. This goldfinch is drooling over the fresh and alive menu. In order to make our yard a bird sanctuary and a bird restaurant, we're increasing the percentage of native plants, especially shrubs and trees, to feed caterpillars and other insects that in turn feed the birds. I record what I observe to aid scientists, but also to learn more about wildlife. Inverting, I think, is birding's cousin, similar in many ways and just as enjoyable. To support a healthy, vibrant, and diverse ecosystem, we limit the mowing to only pathways in the yard. We create brush and wood piles and have built many critter houses, both above and below ground. We also have a dozen bird boxes, including one owl box in our yard. We leave plant stems, dead snags, and leaves to make the yard more hospitable for insects, birds, and other wildlife. Then we sit back and watch life happen. Wildlife raising families, feeding, procreating, and exhibiting a slew of other behaviors. This last summer, late in the season, I sat for about 3 hours each day over 3 consecutive days in front of this critter station, watching a variety of insects. Think of this as an insect apartment housing. One of the apartment dwellers was a leafcutter bee, delivering cut sections of leaf and food to create pollen loaves for each leg, for each egg that she would lay. But look out, because insects are on lots of menus, not just bird menus. This is a genus of cuckoo wasp. The term cuckoo wasp refers to the way in which they lay eggs in the nest of unrelated host species. While a bird watcher can find all the species of birds that live near them within, say, a few years, an inverter is unlikely to see every insect species around them, even in a lifetime. Given the enormity of insect species, including many that not yet identified, there's a good deal of opportunity for great finds. Let's look at a few uncommon or at least rarely reported species that I've observed. In July of 21, the Vermont Center of for Eco Studies reported as follows. Bernie Paquette keeps a keen eye on the wild things in his area. On June 23rd, near Jericho Center, he snapped a photo of a tiny bee on a mock orange flower and shared it with the Vermont Atlas of Life on iNaturalist. Spencer Hardy, a VCE biologist, took a close look at it a few days later and wrote to Bernie as follows. Cool, what plant is this? If it's a mock orange, it very well might be a new species for the state, the bee that is. Based off what I can see of the bee and the flower, I'm tentatively calling this the mock orange scissor bee. 24 hours later, Dr. Asher confirmed the identification, species number 330 for the Vermont Atlas of, Vermont Checklist of Bees. I observed this individual on July 5th of this year. Kent responded to my observation with the following note. Very cool. Hard to see if these things are actually rare or rarely collected or reported. There might be, for example, a bunch of them in collections like UVM, but if there are, they remain undigitalized. This is why we really need to have all data available for use, of course. But for now, at very least, you get the crown for first known Vermont record. Woohoo! Thank you, Kent. Under the category of totally unexpected, the image on the left is the first of this species to be reported on iNaturalist in Vermont. I observed it in our yard in June. At the time, there were only 3 others posted in New England, and only about 16 in all of the US and part of Canada. I observed the image on the right in May. It was the 5th observation of this species in Vermont posted on iNaturalist. Can you spot the field marks? The eye rings and white portion of the antenna are pretty strong field marks. I apologize for the weak picture on this one, but it shows that even with a somewhat imperfect picture, you still can get an ID. This species is in the family of stock-eyed flies. The observation in our yard was the first and is still the only one posted on iNaturalist for Vermont. There's none in New Hampshire, Connecticut, or Maine, and only 2 in New York and 2 in Massachusetts. I observed this ant on a willow plant on May 4th, 2023. It is the only post on iNaturalist of this species. Also known as the Valentine ant, based on the shape of the gaster or abdomen. They have significant flexibility, allowing them to hold their gaster up over their head and body and wave it in the air when they're alarmed. This image is my 98th bee species that I observed in Vermont. I found it at Saxon Hill, a birding hotspot. I observed over 90 species in our yard alone.
Of
90 bee
bees,
species.
right?
Sorry, 90 bee species, which is amazing. If you'd asked me 3 years ago how many I would see, I probably would have said, well, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 or something.
It's opened my eyes too.
In birding, one can often match up a bird with its surroundings. For example, shore birds are often found near or at the shore, and savanna sparrows in an open field or a meadow. Well, likewise, some insects are particular about the terrain and their food selection. Some are specialists feeding on a single species of flower or only a few species of flowers. The insect in this image is fairly common find on oyster mushrooms, but less so elsewhere. And this one was observed on a rose. It looks like he's got little coattails on his back, I think. Dragonflies, pretty near my top insect. Maybe they are my top insect. They're like friends. They're super fast flyers, and they're usually not skittish. Sometimes they land on me and use me as a dinner table while they munch lunch. However, this picturesque beauty that I spotted at another birding hotspot, Colchester Pond, seemed to be camera shy, to say the least. After many sessions of catch me if you can, this dragonfly posed on the tip of a grass stalk while I took the shot shown on the left. Call it guile or vain, the dragonfly then stood straight up on the grass stalk, waving in the breeze like a pennant, as if to say, if you're going to chase me all over Eden, then at least capture my full and gorgeous self. What a beauty indeed. Now, was this wasp happy to see me, or was it calculating how many meals it could make of me? I've observed insects feeding at goldenrods where a wasp will come in and at rocket speed and snatch one of the insects. So don't let the smile fool you. The image on the right highlights that just as in bird photography, it's always good to include the eyes of the insect. Now that can be tough to do, as I usually find insects with their face buried deep in a flower, obviously to get the food. So the image of this individual portrait, though, was relatively easy to capture since the rest of the body was missing. This fly's name means antenna foot. They frequently hold their white-tipped front legs up and wave them around in a manner that makes them appear like the antenna of an ishmoid wasp. They feed on organic matter, bird droppings, and similar waste. I think this one was doing some sort of aerobic exercise. So note the hitchhiker underneath the fly. It's from a family of pseudoscorpions, which are small scorpion-like arachnids, and they're beneficial to humans since they prey on carpet beetle larvae, book lice, ants, mites, and small flies. Really a surprise. I didn't see it when I took the photo. The beauty of digital, right? You blow it up and realize there was more there than what I had originally captured in my observation. Flies often get a bad rap. Yet, as Erica McAllister states in her book, The Secret Life of Flies, they are the most complex, crucial, and highly adaptive creatures on the earth. I titled this photo, Fly by Night. Here are a couple of hoverflies, maybe my third favorite insect. They're acrobatic. They're artful, and they're a joy to watch, albeit they're fairly small size. The eastern phantom crane flies upright with its legs apart. They seem to float in the air like the fluff of a milkweed seed. Now, call me strange if you will, but many times while birding, whether it be from our kitchen window or in the woods, my aha moment is when I see a bird pooping.
I'll call you strange.
In May of this year, the highlight of my day was observing a dragonfly from about a foot away and watching its abdomen, it was on the ground, its abdomen throb, bend, extend, and then voila, it pooped. I apparently scared the living shit out of the grasshopper in this photo. You can see it on just about to drop there on the left. I love it when shit happens in our yard. See the deposit on the ground on the lower left of the image? Sort of looks like a gherkin pickle, I think, though not at all that appetizing. Now we move to the insect's menu. I think the insect on the bottom was playing possum, but it was definitely not out of danger. Call it predation or lunch or supper or midday snack. Either way, for an insect, it's a dangerous world out there. Their motto seems to be, eat, but try not to be eaten. If you're keeping count, the first score goes to the dragon and damselfly team. Here, the spiders team captures a point. And 2 points now to the dragonfly and damselfly team. I swear I could hear the chewing as I viewed discarded parts drift off in the breeze. It was so cool. This dragonfly was using a dried plant stem to floss after lunch. Or so I like to think, anyway. Looks like the spider team's about to have a rout. This bee seems to be cornered, but I wouldn't count the bee out yet. My second favorite, or tied for first insect. Remember the famous Muhammad Ali quote, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. The hands can't hit what the eyes can't see. The image on the upper right that this shows this moth escaped birds and bats. However, it probably was not a good idea to invite ants over for lunch. On the bottom right, we see a lady beetle enjoying some lemon drops. Well, actually, they're aphids, her favorite food. On the left image, we see that caterpillars have more to fear than birds. The stink bug is using the caterpillar for a shish kebab. I offered it ketchup and seasoning, but the stink bug declined. Now, I've witnessed insects fall off flowers and bump into each other, either by mistake or on purpose, but this is the worst insect crash I have ever seen. These New York carpenter ants are not eating the woolly aphids. They're farming them or milking them for sweet desserts. And now a short commercial break for amphibians. Who doesn't love spring creepers and their chorus? I think this one forgot to apply sunscreen. The gray tree frog is capable of surviving freezing of its internal body fluids to temperatures as low as 18 degrees Fahrenheit. Still, it looks to me like this one has goosebumps. Time to exit the room if you need to. Do insects blush? Well, they sure have reason to. The place where many of them make more insects, have sex, copulate, do the dirty deed is outside. Yep, in the park, by your favorite swimming location, in fields of tall grass, on trees, shrubs, flowers. Heck, almost anytime it's above 60 degrees, you can probably find some doing it in your yard. Now, if you're 18 or older, you can view some of the mating observations here tonight. If you're under 18, just go outside and look for yourself. No one needs to know except for the insects themselves. As far as I know, they don't blush. Well, much. The image on the left is a field mark for the rapture moment. Their tips turn silver, or so I imagine. But two's company, three's a crowd. Or sometimes just plain kinky. Maeve coined this one, a pair of three. I like that. I wonder where the ideas in Kama Sutra came from. Perhaps the insect world. These folks turn red when 69ing, or again, so I imagine. But I do love their color. Both Maeve and I agree, there's nothing like a hug to say, I love you. And you brought flowers. How sweet. Wing to wing, a friendship becomes a flirtation, which becomes pure bliss, develops to love, and brings on a family. Spooning, or just plain cuddling, are both adorably comforting, even for slugs. What a great way to say I love you on St. Paddy's Day. Eco-friendly, green sex. These two appear to be heads over heels in love. After finding and mounting the female, male jagged ambush bugs produce courtship behaviors thought to be assessed by the female during mate decisions. So I can imagine she's saying, hugs are always good. Going for a piggyback ride is fun too. And sometimes insects having sex are just darn extra cute. I love these guys with the little hat. Don't know what that was all about, but it was pretty cute. The challenge these two have is keeping the stripes lined up. Matching couples pajamas. Couple boudoir photography, boudoir photography is a photographic style featuring featuring intimate, romantic, and sometimes sensual images of love couples. Fun and foreplay. Ooh, that tickles. Your pad or mine? Insect sex or copulation, whatever you want to call it, insects put their hearts into it. What else do insects offer? what other rewards come from inverting? Well, often nature is live art. The diffused image and the fern add a soft and calming feeling to this photo. The harvester butterfly is the only carnivorous, that is insectivorous, butterfly in North America. The larvae feed on various aphids. It lives in wooded areas near streams close to alders. We have at least two alders in the yard. Plant their food source and they will come. I call this one On the Prowl. Even ants are a thing of beauty. I recommend the book titled Anthill by E.O. Wilson. It's a novel, an engaging novel that brings you deep into the very social ant world. I'm overjoyed when I get to meet my insect neighbors up front and personal, especially when they reach out to make the first contact, sometimes literally landing on me. And this one stayed on me for a very long time. Welcome aboard, Meadowhawk. Grasshoppers are perhaps the insect equivalent of the blue jay. Common and often overlooked and underappreciated. Yet note the many patterns, the various shades of green, red, brown, the alert eyes, the complex construction of the legs. Observation skills are learned and honed over time and practice. The better we get at observing, the more we appreciate and learn about other life forms, each with unique functions and sensory capabilities necessary for their life in the world. It's likely that all form in nature serves a purpose for the species that evolved the way it did. I do wonder at the practicality of each design and also at the beauty of them. Regarding the spotted longhorn beetle, I cannot imagine eating while having a mustache that long. Asian beetles are considered a true pest. On the other hand, native lady beetles are considered highly beneficial. They don't bite, and they consume several harmful garden pests, such as aphids. The first 3 rows of the photo collage are Asian lady beetles. On the far right of the 3rd row is an Asian lady beetle nymph. The 4th row and on are mostly native lady beetles. 36 native lady beetle species have been historically documented in Vermont. Unfortunately, 12 of these species have not been seen since the 1970s. E.O. Wilson said, "Unless humanity learns a great deal more about global biodiversity and moves quickly to protect it, we will soon lose most of the species composing life on Earth." Though inverting isn't focused on invertebrates, arachnids certainly interest me as well. Just as when I'm birding, I stay alert to anything nature has to offer. Note the surgeon-like pointers, or perhaps more like knitting needles, in the image on the left. Many a time when I look closely into the eyes of a dragonfly, I think they see and understand more of me than I do of them. They seem to be telling me, if only humans could talk, then we could see eye to eye. I find the pastel colors of this image pleasing. This great find falls under the category of bizarre. Maeve and I were walking with Lindy Gianni at Camel's Hump State Forest Trails when I noticed a dragonfly on the ground, shaking and shimmering like crazy. Turns out a bee had attached itself to the dragonfly and apparently would not let go. You can see it just above the word genus, the bee attached to the dragonfly. Faces only a mother could love. Some of their behaviors can be a bit grisly too. Starting with the image to the left, the female of the thick-headed fly species pounces on a host bee while in flight. She inserts her ovipositor between two abdominal segments, inserts a single egg, and flies away. The larvae feeds within the abdominal cavity, eventually killing the host. On the right, the American carrion beetle lays its eggs in raw flesh, particularly that of dead animals and fungi. Then its larvae consume the material. Taking a break from insect menus for a bit, let's take a look at a few arachnids. On a walk at Bob's Farm Trails in Jericho, something very small caught my attention at about eye level to my right. Looking closer, I viewed 4 of the 8 eyes of a jumping spider, clearly looking at me and following my movements. Now, I hadn't heard of jumping spiders at the time. Unlike other spiders who sense the world mostly through vibration and touch, jumping spiders rely on vision. And boy, can jumping spiders jump. This first one I viewed eventually looked away from me, but instead of walking away, the spider surprised me by leaping right towards my face. Perhaps it wanted a closer look. It would not be the last time that such a small creature would turn the tables on me as I tried to photograph them. Sometimes they behave as though they are as curious about me as I am about them. This leaf beetle seems to be tethered with a safety lifeline. When observing insects in our backyard, I sometimes see one fall off a leaf and I think, oh, that must have hurt. Yet they always get up and move on. This one has a lifeline of support. But the truth of the matter is, insects are in trouble and experiencing worldwide declines in total volume as well as species. The estimate of the number of species that science has not yet discovered is huge, and some of those may go extinct before we discover them. Never mind understand the role that they play in the ecosystem that we all depend on. So please join me in a moment of remembrance as part of this insect memorial. The rusty patch bumblebee was common throughout eastern North America, but populations crashed in the late 90s. It was last observed in Vermont in 1999. Although the exact cause of this crash is uncertain, introduced parasites from imported colonies and pesticide use appear to be 2 major culprits. If we're going to prevent further erosion of our natural systems and the extinctions of more wildlife, humanity will have to adopt a new set of values. Excavating a stem to build a house looks like hard work. This tiny, hard to see bee is around 5 to 7 millimeters long. I often view them kicking out of plant sawdust out of last year's plant stems. At the end of the summer season, leave the raspberry and the goldenrod and other small stem plants, and right through next spring, these bees then will make their home in your yard as well. Here are a few basic considerations for taking photographs of insects. With single lens reflex, use a fast enough speed setting to freeze the individual's movement. I like to shoot at least 1,000th of a second, but light has a factor there. For IDs on naturalists, you don't need to get, for IDs on iNaturalist, you don't need to get perfect photos. And by the way, phone cameras work fine. By posting your photos on iNaturalist, you support scientists and you learn more about what you're observing. This photo gives an example of what a small insect might look like without the camera. This image is what I can see for detail on the computer after cropping the image. I love the digital technology. Just as in birding, there are many ways to enjoy inverting. And as in birding, one can enjoy the surprises in nature, even if the target species doesn't make itself available. This long-tailed weasel was a total surprise. It was also a mystery at first. However, that's too long a story to tell tonight. For now, I will just say that these critters are very persistent, tenacious, brave, and they're not to be put off from their targeted dinner. a story I would love to tell you sometime. When birding, remember to look down as well as up. And when inverting, remember to look up as well as down. Life is all around us, 360 degrees in nearly every outdoor location. So where should a person go to see what birds eat? Over the last 3 years, across a journey of nearly 100 miles, I have posted over 16,000 observations of insects and spiders of such, invertebrates, covering over 1,000 species, 1,000 species, all in our 1.3-acre yard. However, numbers can by themselves be rather dry statistics. The diversity and behaviors witnessed, that's where the intriguing stories are. More of these stories is a whole other chapter to be shared another time, or better yet, to witness yourself. Observe insects in your backyard. Insects are everywhere. They're seasonally variable. It's like a treasure hunt. They're easy to find. It's rewarding. And where's the best place to go inverting? Possibly right in your own backyard. Henry David Thoreau wrote, "Nature will bear the closest inspection. She invites us to lay our eye level with her smallest leaf and take an insect view of its plane." So there you have it. There are more colors, textures, sounds, behaviors, and species of insects than one could possibly ever see in totality. Some yet to be discovered, even here in Vermont. Some not yet named by science. You're welcome to take a screenshot or a photo of this in the next resource page. I will highlight that the biodiversity page that I created on iNaturalist lists a leaderboard count of species, observers, and observations for each town and city in Vermont, for those of you that like to keep count and tally. And also invite you to visit my Vermont Bug-Eyed blog for nature-inspired single-panel comics, where I publish a new comic every Saturday. And you can also find other nature-related journals, stories, and more on the blog. Here are a few more resources you could make note of if you like. In addition, check out the Vermont Atlas of Life Species Profile. It's fabulous, and they're adding quite a bit more to it as time goes on. There's a link on the right side of my Vermont Bug-Eyed blog to get there. On this VAL file, you can type in any species name to get a load of data on that species. Tremendous resource. So thank you for joining Maeve and me tonight. And thank you, GMAS, for sponsoring Great Finds. I'll end with a poem by Emily Dickinson. It's titled, "Nature is What We See." Nature is what we see. The hill, the afternoon, squirrel, eclipse, the bumblebee. Nay, nature is heaven. Nature is what we hear. The bobolink, the sea, thunder, the cricket. Nay, nature is harmony. Nature is what we know, yet have no art to say. So impotent our wisdom is to her simplicity.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank both Bernie and Mav for putting together what I thought was a fascinating program. We would like to also have you pose questions in the chat. Currently, Bernie and Mav, we only have one question posed, and that was from one of our attendees who wanted to know what kind of camera are you using to get these detailed insect views? And then we have a new message coming in.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good. I have used a point and shoot. I think it's a Canon. Did so for about a year. Then I moved to a 35 millimeter Nikon D3300. Started with both a 50 millimeter lens and then 50 to 200 millimeter zoom lens. All of those I mentioned so far have worked well. Now I've moved on to a macro lens, which I like a lot. I will say that different lenses in different camera setting, different cameras tend to have pluses and minuses. And I certainly would entertain a further discussion with anybody who's thinking, but I guess my bigger point is don't let equipment preclude you from observations. First of all, you don't need to take photos to enjoy and start to pay attention to these small insects, because the more you look, you start to see more. You just become acclimated to picking up things that normally you wouldn't have picked up. But whatever, if you want to take photos, and I certainly promote posting on iNaturalist, because one, you help science and scientists, and two, you get to learn more as people help you identify it. You don't have to know the identification when you put it on iNaturalist, so you'll get to learn the identification from others. So the photos don't need to be perfect, and anything that takes photos typically is going to be able to give you enough probably for an ID.
One of our attendees wanted to add a note and stated that often on iNaturalist, they list the camera used. So it seems to me that if you are going to be using iNaturalist or checking it out and you're interested in what camera to use, you might be able to get some idea about what is listed on some of the listings.
Great idea.
We have no other questions at this moment. We have people who are giving you compliments, great presentation, et cetera, and I will echo them and take the opportunity to thank you very much for our second presentation in the Green Mountain Audubon series. Again, check our events tab on our Green Mountain Audubon website for the next upcoming one by Emily Filiberti, a young woman scientist who is going to be sharing some of her doctoral research. So thank you. Thank you. Oh, we're getting lots of thank yous. Thank yous. Excellent presentation. Both of you, enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Bernie, for introducing us to inverting. And Maeve, there will come a time, there will come a place where a limpkin will come to you.
I
So
hope
perhaps you can count on your good fortune in the future. We have put into the chat also a link, and we would appreciate if you would consider a small donation for educational purposes. It is 7:36. I'd like to thank my other board members for setting this up, and I'd like to thank both Maeve and Bernie for their excellent presentation tonight. But mostly, I'd like to thank the participants, 36 of whom are still with us. Thank you for supporting nature. Our motto is connecting people with nature, and we will be doing that, and we will be hoping to see you again. So with that, good night, everyone. Take care. Stay safe in the storm, and get out there and enjoy nature. Thank you, Maeve. Thank you, Bernie. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Tom.